Let's go straight away to VIP Hotline. Senator Tom Cotton is on with us, Republican from Arkansas, one of the rising stars in the conservative movement. And he's got a new piece of legislation that he's introduced with Georgia Senator David Perdue. It's called the RAISE Act, RAISE, Reforming American Immigration for Strong Employment Act. It's been very well received by at least right-of-center organizations thus far. Senator, good morning. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, Alex, it's good to be on with you. If this is the VIP hotline, I may have called into the wrong number.
Yes. No, you called the right number. It's line 7, Senator Cotton. I like to note that because it is utterly irrelevant to all the listeners, yet you hear talk show hosts reference line numbers all the time, which is funny to me. Anyway, let's get into the details of the legislation. This is a very carefully crafted. It's not. I don't think it's the most comprehensive thing necessarily, but it's a very carefully crafted step that is being perceived as a move to shift the narrative about immigration reform. Talk to us about the act and what's in it.
Yeah, Alex, if we step back from any particular legislative proposal and think about the purpose of our immigration system, I contend, I think most Americans believe it's just common sense, that our immigration system should serve the interest and the well-being of American citizens, not of foreigners. I wish my fellow man well all around the world, but I serve my fellow citizens in the state of Arkansas and all around the country. And when you look at it from that perspective, not from the perspective of what's good for foreigners, whether they're here in our country illegally or whether they're overseas and they want to come here, I think the answers to a lot of questions get pretty simple. So, for instance, our legal immigration system has been at historically high levels. We're now at some of the highest levels of foreign-born residents in our country that we've been in 100 years. This is at a time when people who work with their hands or work on their feet have not had a pay raise in decades. I think those two things are related. As we bring in more low-skilled or unskilled labor, of course it's going to cost jobs for blue-collar workers and drive down blue-collar wages. Unfortunately, our legal immigration system only gives visas or green cards to 1 out of about every 15 immigrants based on their skills or their demonstrated economic potential. This legislation is a down payment on fixing that. So we would focus on reunifying immediate families, spouses, and unmarried minor children. We would eliminate the diversity lottery, which serves no economic or humanitarian need, and we would cap the refugee program at 50,000 refugees per year, which is in keeping with where it was over the last 15 years under President Bush and President Obama, exactly where it was just 5 or 6 years ago before President Obama increased it. The impact of that would be to cut annual immigration in half, from 1 million green cards a year to half a million green cards a year, and it would be a down payment on refocusing our legal immigration system on high-skilled and ultra-high-skilled workers of the kind that Canada and Australia uses so well.
Yeah, this is the analogy that I think it was from Ann Coulter's book from a couple years ago, Adios America, which is that America, we basically, it's as if the New England Patriots staffed their roster with just people they found walking the street around the stadium. It's based on geography and proximity to the stadium and not hand-selecting the best possible options. And that's kind of how we've been running our immigration system, Senator, which is that there's a huge priority for people who live in proximity to the United States, regardless of if they're going to be able to contribute to our economy.
Yeah, and like for instance, look at the family reunification. I think most Americans want to see immediate families reunited. That's why
you're probably correct on that.
Yeah, so we're a pro-family party, for instance. So I don't want to see spouses or unmarried minor children broken up. But if you leave Arkansas, for instance, and you go to New York, because as Frank Sinatra said, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. That's all the best for you. You have to realize you're going to see your parents and your siblings less than if you stayed on the farm in Arkansas. The same thing holds true for immigrants to this country across 200-plus years. If you come to America, you don't have a right to bring your entire extended family, your entire village, your entire clan, your entire tribe. It really has never been that way historically until just the last 50 years when we created this system that lets a single citizen or green card holder bring virtually every blood relative they have, which then extends itself because those people can bring virtually every blood relative they have. And that's all done without regard to those people's ability to work in our economy. If they had high skills, if they were computer scientists, if they were great violinists, if they were world-class scientists, they would be able to come here on work-based immigration programs. I think that we have to get a handle on all these immigration pathways that don't reward language skills and job training and education levels and focus on those things.
Senator Cotton, John Carney, I just want to say I think you brought up a really important point that a lot of people aren't familiar with, which is that our immigration system was fundamentally changed about 50 years ago. The historical pattern was not that you get to bring in your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, and then they bring in their cousins and they bring in their cousins. It was actually aimed at looking at what would benefit America rather than, just reuniting families. And so moving away from that isn't an abandonment of, some great American tradition. It's an abandonment of something that goes back to LBJ and the Great Society. It's a return to our traditional focus on immigration.
John, that's correct. Our story of immigration in this country is not a story of unbroken immigration at ever higher levels of immigration. It is a story of immigration waves followed by the immigration pauses to allow those waves to assimilate. We've had really three great waves. The first was the wave of Irish immigration in the mid-19th century, and then from the 1880s to the 1920s from southern and eastern Europe. Then there was basically a pause for 40 years, and then since 1965, immigration has been refocused away from Europe to the rest of the world. Without evaluating any one of those specific historical measures, it's important to note that that is the story of immigration in America. When we have these surges, we often have pauses so people can get on their feet, get jobs, assimilate into our society, and get upward mobility. Now, some of my Democratic colleagues have said this is an anti-immigrant bill. I would say the exact opposite. The very people who are most hurt by unlimited immigration each year are the recent immigrants who are going to be holding the kinds of jobs that new immigrants are competing with. So I think this is a very pro-immigrant and pro-immigration bill. It's simply refocusing immigration where it should be, which is what's best for American citizens and for our economy and our society.
Yeah, it actually does sound very respectful of immigrants and immigration. Senator Tom Cotton is our guest. Breitbart News Daily, Alex Marlow here along with John Carney. He's a Republican senator from Arkansas. His new bill, the RAISE Act on immigration, is the topic of discussion. A couple specifics to ask you about, Senator, and then I want to ask you about the big picture messaging philosophy, which I think is pretty strong here. But the bill would, some of the highlights, a 40 or 50% reduction in annual migration, end of chain migration, and the end of the visa lottery. Can you talk to us about these respectively?
Yeah, so those are the three big pieces of our legal immigration system in which green cards are given out, not based on language skills, job training, and education. So today, if you come to America, you get a green card. You can basically bring any blood relative you have, not just spouse and unmarried minor children, but siblings, adult children, parents, and so forth. We would stop all that. So we want to reunite immediate families, but that's a choice you have to make if you want to come to the United States, to bring your immediate family, but not your extended family. That's by far the biggest number of green cards given out every year. Almost two-thirds of the green cards go out to extended family reunification, which just serves no demonstrated economic need. The diversity lottery was created, a few decades ago to try to account for shifting patterns of immigration to make sure that each region of the world is represented. Strangely enough, one of the big regions that benefits from something called the diversity lottery is Europe. I don't think that serves any economic or humanitarian purpose. So we would simply eliminate the diversity lottery, as many of the open borders and amnesty first types have done in their past failed reform efforts. Third and final, the refugee program right now has no cap. Presidents are able to increase it largely without any congressional input. We would simply cap it at 50,000. That's in keeping with what Barack Obama proposed just a few years ago. It's in keeping with the average of the Bush and Obama administration. It's more than double where President Bush had it in the middle part of the last decade. We think 50,000 refugee immigrants is perfectly humane and deals with some of the challenges we face in the world. Ultimately, though, a refugee crisis is not solved by immigration policy. It is solved by foreign policy. that's why we have so many refugees, because Barack Obama's foreign policy was such a failure.
Now, I want to ask, and you've been very generous with your time here on Breitbart News Daily, and I do want to ask about the messaging. And if you look at the way this is worded, or at least the way you're presenting it, it seems very metered, very reasonable, focusing on the economic needs of Americans and not being disrespectful or demeaning other cultures. And one thing that I've been critical of the president in the current administration over the last week or so was the rollout of the immigration executive order, the temporary stay on visas from countries that are prone to terror. And one thing that it seems like you're much more mindful of here is the messaging and how people can talk about immigration in a way that is less polarizing than it has been. Because we know that in Breitbart, I'm sure you're well aware, our listeners think of this as perhaps the most serious issue. Talk about the state of our dialogue on this topic in general in America.
Well, immigration is one issue where the leaders of our country has been most detached from the people of our country. And I mean, in both parties, and not just in politics and business and culture and the academy and so forth. That's one thing that Donald Trump recognized during the campaign last year, that leaders in both parties were not speaking to the desires of the American people. And most polls show the vast majority want no increase in immigration. They want it to stay the same, or they want it to decrease.
Exactly.
That policy of low immigration is also pro-immigrant, in my opinion, for the very reason that new immigrants are most likely to face competition for jobs and pressure on their wages and benefits by continued admission of up to 1 million immigrants a year. So what I want to do is to make sure that people who are struggling to get ahead, who are struggling to get their first foot on the ladder of economic success, to live the American dream, have a chance to do so. Again, this is in keeping with our immigration history going back over 200 years of immigration waves and pauses. That is a pro-immigrant plan. And I think that more people in both parties need to recognize that you can have a reasonable debate about the economic impacts and the social impacts of mass immigration without being anti-immigrant, and to throw around charges of nativism or xenophobia or racism, as too many Democrats and people in the media do, I think is irresponsible, and it makes solving these very complicated problems much harder.